the city manager. And so that they're neutralized. And then it looks like all these chiefs are saying, you wouldn't believe when we have been, now I wasn't at the, boy, I tell you, it was the worst meeting to miss. I've been at the Capitol several times talking to legislators and working with county sheriffs of Colorado and trying to deal on the gun issue. But the one day that the sheriffs testified in front of the committee and the picture was in the paper, I wasn't there, and I heard about it from you guys. But when we were doing that, Chief Oates and the chief from Denver and a few of those big city chiefs were testifying in favor, and their officers who were providing security in the Capitol were like, "You go, Sheriff. That's bullshit." It's really odd. I'm not running into cops anywhere that are in favor of these new gun laws, but I believe there are dominant chiefs, the Chiefs Association, that are driving that too. And if you think about it, think about that from the standpoint of the chief culture is, you got to get to be a major city chief. Even within the Chiefs Association in Colorado, there's this sort of group of the big city chiefs. In the International Association of Chiefs of Police, which is basically our national one, they have some from out of the country too. There's the major city chief states. So the coup de grace is to get to be a major city chief. What kind of leadership is in all of our major cities in our country? There you go. So they're turning loose these chiefs to talk, and it makes it look like that all police employees are in favor of that. And I'm telling you, it's just not true. But these other chiefs are not being turned loose to oppose it.
Somebody once said all it takes for tyranny to survive or to succeed is for the good men to remain silent. And how in God's name are we supposed to take that, their political positioning? How in God's name is that supposed to be any comfort to anybody?
What I do, and what I wish you would do, is I would call your city councilman up and say, you should let your chief talk about that. Because these chiefs, I swear, John Camper, I'm not going to get him in trouble. But he has given me thumbs up on the letters I've written and that kind of stuff. But he's not turned loose to speak.
Has there been any thought given to forming an independent sheriff's association that has its own affiliation and by numbers would be quite a bit larger than the big cities?
Well, we have our own sheriff's association in this. All 62 sheriffs.
No, I'm talking about nationally, internationally.
Oh.
Did you know that Eric Holder sits on the board of Interpol?
No.
Well, he does.
Yeah. Well, there is a National Sheriff's Association.
So that's, yeah. What I'm suggesting is that you would have more voices from independent sheriffs who could put out press releases that would be far more believed by
what I do is, as I'm starting to see that, the National Sheriff's Association, of course, has a lot of people from back east, which we know think differently. The Western State Sheriffs is basically from here west, and they're becoming a very powerful organization, doing exactly what you're talking about. Jason, I've ignored you too long, I'm sorry. So let's get him first.
The question I have, Stan, is I know you cannot speak for the DA's office with authority, but in any conversations that you've had with Pete Helsinger, has he made clear to you or given you any indication as to his position on these issues, whether he's going to prosecute, not prosecute?
Yeah, I can't speak for Pete, but my belief is, just because I know him well enough to know, he's not interested in. I personally have not asked him. In the conversations we've had, though, I believe he's not interested in the kinds of things that we're considering. He probably will leave himself open, just like I have, dealing with a violent meth guy or something, which I know doesn't satisfy, everybody in a purest form, but I believe he's on the right side. Question from the lady. Yes.
The new law, does it say that magazines that hold up to 15 rounds cannot be owned by anybody or manufactured anymore after 5 months?
Sold or transferred?
No.
It's a development ban.
No, you're supposed to be grandfathered in if you have that.
All minors stamped 1984.
Right. And I've told my staff that our presumption is, if you have one, is that you own it prior to today.
Sharon, it's sold or transferred.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to sell or transfer.
Yes.
Before we went, can you say a few words about the drug?
Yeah. So this gentleman asked me to say a few words about the drone issue. We beat up the gun stuff. Bill, did you have a gun thing, one more gun thing before I go on to a different topic? Did you have a gun question before I move on to another topic? Okay.
I'm confused.
I'm sorry?
I say, Stan, I'm confused. Because there's no law, federal or state, that supersedes the Constitution of the United States.
Amen.
That's right. And yet I hear you on the radio, and this is why I'm confused. Because you're going to enforce the law, but you're not going to go out and make an issue out of it.
I don't
Now,
know.
how can you be on, you've told me in other meetings that you're a known keeper, which I respect that, I hope you are. But how do you enforce the law that is not constitutional and still be on the other side?
I think we talked about that, Bill.
I bet you did, I don't care.
Yeah.
But again, on these clips, these magazines, I've been told, I don't know if it's true or not, you don't know. Once I pass away, I cannot give them to my children, I can't give them to my son, I've got to give them up. That's compensation. That's taken away from me. That's a direct violation of the Constitution.
That's right.
I mean, you're not going to be here forever, Stan.
Right. You're right. I'm convinced you're going to live another 100 years. So, I won't have to deal with that. But, yeah. We are getting late. We are getting. No, I wanted to. This gentleman asked me about drones, and I really wanted to talk about that. Yeah. One more, last question.
One more gun question.
Sure.
Predicated upon what you told us, based on the laws that have been passed in Michigan, your statements indicate that sheriffs and local police departments are not going to enforce new laws. Who is? Why would they have passed it if they know that you folks are not going to enforce it?
They did know that. I don't know exactly what the police department's doing. I can only tell you what I think their chiefs feel like. But it's hard for me to wrap my brain around trying to explain what our legislature does. So they pass things all the time without any understanding of what it takes to enforce it. I don't think they have any idea the position they're putting us in. And
I think everybody did.
so-
Sheriff, you have a resolution by the county that would support not violating the Second Amendment. Can you explain to us how much weight that holds, if any?
Well, their resolution basically says we support the Second Amendment and we don't want to spend any county resources in trying to enforce any of these new
But it
guns.
doesn't supersede the state statute, does it?
No.
So it has no weight.
Well,
People need to know that. It has no weight.
it may not have any weight unless you subscribe to what David's talking about the people's voice. And they've done a good job of representing what I
Waits in this room.
Yeah. So
Exactly.
we are getting past time here. I did want to talk about drones, okay? So, I'm sorry.
Well, Sheriff, why don't we piggyback on the drone?
Okay.
Do you have a mandated directive for SOP when Posse Comitatus is moved?
No.
A mandated SOP when posse comitatus is invoked, could you explain that a little bit?
What does that mean, Chair?
Part of it. I think a lot of us are in the dark. Well, governments have cities have mandated SOPs.
Standard operating.
Whenever there's a disaster, Posse Comitatus is martial law, and it will be invoked. I just want to know how he stands, what he's going to do in his department when that happens.
I have no
Or would you refuse to?
Yeah, I don't want to be part of it.
Would you deputize all of us if they came after us?
Oh, yeah. I'd say, I need your help, and I think we could ream Mesa County if we had to. This gentleman asked about drones, and I did want to talk about that. I won't get to all the topics that I was going to talk about. But drones, if you saw the cover of Time magazine, right, it said, "Here come the drones," or something. It had a picture of an American household with a weaponized Predator drone in it. Anybody see that Time magazine? All right. It was also in National Geographic. If you folded it open, guess whose picture was in there? Mesa County Sheriff's Office. All right. Here's what happened. All right. I have a staff member who's interested in this, and about 3 or 4 years ago, he came to me and he said, look, I've got all these contacts around the world, and this is going to become a big issue in our country. He predicted this 4 years ago. And he said, there's going to be a lot of people that want to, perhaps use this tool in civilian law enforcement. Can we get into it? And I said, well, I'm not really interested in, widening the net with more stuff. But what I was interested in doing was, because it was easily predictable that it would be somebody that is going to abuse, a tool that could be abused, I was interested in doing it from a sheriff's perspective and creating a body of research for civilian law enforcement nationwide. So we got into the business. And the FAA was unbelievably restrictive on all this stuff. You couldn't fly it. Now, any one of you could go buy a hobby airplane or a hobby helicopter and do what you want with nothing. But if I did it, I was in violation of FAA rules. So we went through that whole thing. We use these things. Now, remember, the weaponized Predator drone that's over the house in the Time magazine is a lot different than the 2.5-pound baby helicopter that I use to try to find lost children, at-risk adults, Alzheimer's walkaways. I've used it one time to try to find a fugitive. It was a guy who hijacked a car, and it turned out to be a complete ruse to try to steal $600,000 of dope money that was inside of it. And he was armed, and we flew over a patch of bushes and found him with a thermal imager. That's the only time I've ever used it that way. We've used it with these kids, and we've taken some crime scene photography with it. Our use is so far from sinister that it's unbelievable. But because people see this Time magazine, they've been in my office and like, what are you doing, Sheriff, with these drones or whatever, And again, it's a force multiplier for me. Do you know what is the recommendation nationwide for the number of deputies per citizen served in the community as basically a recommendation for strength? How big our sheriff's office should be? It's 2 deputies per 1,000 citizens served, all right? Guess what we're at? I'm at 3/4 of 1 deputy per 1,000 citizens served. So I've got to figure out how to multiply my force and be efficient. And if I can put a little baby helicopter up and do a real quick search, and try to find some kid or some, Alzheimer's patient, or do some crime scene photography versus paying an airplane to do it, then I'm going to do it. And that's really
why not
what's
get
done.
citizens involved and start like Air Pilot did down in Arizona and have your little posse. And they got free. You just got to do some training.
Yeah. Well,
Sign up.
Yeah, maybe that's where we'll go. I mean, we don't frankly have enough
Citizens
use.
keep wanting to help, but the government keeps saying, nope,
Dan,
you can't come past here.
if you're flying over somebody's house looking for evidence, you have to have a warrant.
This is, if you're in an airplane and you're above 500 feet, case law is pretty clear about what to do. Since this is a little bit new, some of that case law hasn't been developed. But what I wanted to do was develop policy and practice that says, if there's a question about an expectation of privacy, we need to get a warrant. There needs to be judicial review in it. It could be abused. That's why I wanted to create the body of research that takes us in that direction. And that's really where we're at. There is some pretty good case law about airplanes, manned aircraft. It's been around forever and ever and ever.
Under 500 feet is a good target.
Yeah. Please don't shoot my baby helicopter out there.
Don't fly it over my house.
If Sharon calls me and says you're naked and wandering around the yard and you've lost your mind and it's a winter night, I might fly looking for you.
Please don't take pictures.
Yes. So that's really what we're up to. It'll be interesting to see how this all folds out. It'd be sad to me to see what might turn out to be a pretty useful tool to be just scuttled all together because of these concerns, But if that's what it does, it does. We haven't got that much money invested in it because we were the first county in the country to get a certificate of authorization from the FAA to fly the whole county when we wanted to. If that's what happens, then we're done, I will tell you an interesting story about the FAA. So many of you know we have this open homicide case where for a long time, 4 years, there was a body that was missing, all right? And somebody came to us and said, hey, there's this big uranium test hole out on Uncompahgre in a really remote location. It's about 8-9 feet across, and it's deep, really deep. And they said it'd be a great place to throw a body. So for a little while, we contemplated taking our little baby helicopter, put a bunch of lights and a camera on it, and flying it straight down in this hole to film the sides and film the bottom. And that was before we had this standing certificate of authorization to do it. You had to go through the FAA's process to do it if you wanted to follow the law. And there were times where I wouldn't have, if it would have been an emergency, I wouldn't have cared what the FAA said, but I didn't want to set, bad examples, so we tried to follow the rules. So we called the FAA up and said, look, this is the deal, we want to search this hole, and, this is what we want to do. And they said, oh, there's not enough. Then, in order for them to grant you access within 1 hour, it had to be an emergency. And they said, it's not an emergency. They said, okay, well, we don't need to be out there tomorrow. We'll go through the longer process that takes 30 days. And they said, well, don't bother because we just don't think it's an appropriate use. And I asked the guy on the phone, I got on the phone, and I said, all right, in the history of the FAA, has there ever been a time where you govern subterranean flight in America? There was a long pause. And they said, well, we're not talking about that. You're going to have to actually lift that thing off the ground and go over the hole. That's the area that we're concerned about. So eventually we decided not to do that because it was too risky. We'd probably lose the helicopter. So we developed a pulley system and a camera with a light and put it down in there, and it turned out to be fine.
How many drones do you have, and how many drones does Fed have in this area?
The feds don't have any in this area that I'm aware of. We have two, a little baby helicopter and a fixed wing that's wingspan's about this long, and I think it weighs 6 pounds.
So when State Patrol and flag down supposed speeders out in Prudhoe, not...
That's a manned airplane.
Was it manned?
Yeah.
Through Freedom of Information, from a FOIA request, I believe Grand Junction is one of the launching sites for different drones throughout the country, and those are federal through DHS. I mean, we can look that up, but I've seen Grand Junction is one of the launch sites and the refueling sites. I believe it's through DHS, but it's some federal agency where there is federal drones
They have federal
over our space, I believe.
authorization.
I don't think that's true.
They have federal what?
Launch authorization for this area.
How many federal dollars does the sheriff's office get?
How many federal dollars do we get? We get federal dollars for our school resource officers. We just got 3 new school resource officers that we lost in the big layoff of 2010. And that's about $180,000 worth of money. And then we get about $350,000 worth of money through the Office of National Drug Control Policy that helps go towards our drug enforcement efforts with our drug task force, which is both us and the city police department. We spend all those monies on our deputy sheriffs and police officers.
And did you get any seizures?
Oh, yeah, and then any seizures we get drug seizure funds. If we seize money, and there's all these different factors, but we can get a portion of that.
How much typically?
Well, it can range. I mean, if it's a big ongoing case and you share that with other agencies, you can get 5% or 10%. If you are just responsible for taking a cash load off of the highway, which we've done several of, and these people don't claim the cash, because they know it's illegal, and if they claim it, then they're going to go to jail too for a longer time. But so it's like it's found property essentially. The seizure goes through the federal government to the DEA, and we can get up to 80% back. And now we've spent some of that money.
You got a jail one going on right now?
A what?
It's a jail study that you're doing? Evidence decision based?
That doesn't have anything to do with that seized money though.
Is that another federal?
No. We're partners with the National Institute of Corrections. That's a federal outfit, but we don't get any actual dollars here. We just get technical assistance. They bring in experts, and a lot of their experts are from local places. They just pay for the travel. Any more questions? Rick, and then this guy right here.
If the federal government were to start patrolling Mason County with drones, is there anything you could do about it to get them out of here?
Damn sure.